Adam and Jackie Sappington. They're chef owners of the Country Cat, Harlow, and Prasad. We knew them. They worked with us a couple of years ago and actually did a culinary road trip to Country Cat, and they were speakers on our stage. We were there with ICCA, and we're just an amazing couple and very talented individuals in our industry. And then Bill King, which many of you would know from King's Farm to Table, but you know him when he was, also with McCormick and Schmick's and Crave. So he was a member of both associations, both ICCA and GCIA over the years, and a member for like 15 plus years. But now he's got a microfarm and farm stand. That was going to be on our culinary road trip this time around. And then we have Alan Kahn, who's the VP of Food Service for the Idaho Potato Commission, and Adam Moore, which many of you know, who's been, affiliated with our association for many years. He is the president of Flashpoint Innovation, basically a consultant to the Idaho Potato Commission and other clients, and a very creative guy who's got a lot of good innovative ideas today. So thanks to all of you for being on here. Really appreciate that. And let's start with Jackie and Adam. I mean, obviously, we kind of led into a little bit of what's going on there. We know you have an airport location, and we just talked about how the national news affects travel there. So why don't we start with that and then talk more so about what you have been doing with Harlow, especially.
Yeah, so the airport, we closed that middle of March, I think, like everybody else did.
And that location was open. We had just crossed our 5-year term in that space. So we had been open for 5 years in the airport. It was our second location to our street location. And so then leading up to the massive shutdown in March, and that's what you're saying, a typical March day is like 30,000 people a day going through our airport. We're not a huge airport, but we're a good mid-size airport. That went down to less than 1,000, like 500 at times at the lowest point. So it was this crazy fallout. And at this point, we're at about down 70%. And we're hoping that employments can get to 50% of what the seasonal average is, and that would help us get a better idea of how we can open in some capacity. The port's been very flexible that you don't have to open 100% as we were during this time, that we can be open in some capacity, some limited capacity as hopefully things start to ramp up.
And that would be grab and go, because we have about a 600 square foot grab and go zone and the bar. But that's what we'd start with, and then slowly implement how, it's a sit down restaurant. So it's just going to be determined on how we need to pivot in order to turn it into either counter service, or if it's just strictly to go, or there's just still a lot of unknowns with it.
And you also sell Stumptown coffee there, because I bought it many times.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Good.
So, yeah, talk to us about, so since then, Harlow's, talk to us about that and, what you've done and how invigorating that is now for you.
Yeah, it was a big pivot for us. We purchased Harlow and Prasad 2 years ago, right about this time, and kind of a switch in regards to, culinary perspective, going into a plant-based restaurant as opposed to what Country Cat is, which is not a plant-based restaurant. I mean, let's be honest. So it was definitely widening our horizons with that, but it's also a lifestyle change for us too. And the pivot for that has been actually really good in a lot of ways. As a cook, my whole life, it was given the opportunity to completely submerge myself into wellness, mindfulness, and in a plant-based perspective when it's approaching a menu. So approaching a menu from a plant-based way without having any meat involved, was a complete switch for me. And honestly, it took me a little time, but it really took me going back into the kitchen full time once COVID hit, because we had to lay everybody off. And then Jackie and I kept the restaurant open by me in the back and Jackie up front, and we just ran it. So, with that being said, and being a cook, in nature, it was a matter of really tightening up the systems and getting it in place, and really localizing even more of the purchasing that we're doing here. So there's silver linings to everything. And through this, I think everybody's looking for that every day. So that's really helped me keep my head on my shoulders is really getting back into the kitchen and being in there every day, and only really running one restaurant as opposed to 4 to 5. So it allows you to have a little more time on your hands and be able to get back into the stove. It's been good.
And what do you see the future of that concept? Do you see it expanding? Do you see additional locations?
For Harlow, it's counter service. It's made for, it's high volume counter service. It wasn't at the pre-COVID, it wasn't a huge takeout place. It has definitely shifted to be heavily takeout and delivery. And in the course of us streamlining the menu to let the food, go from us via delivery or pickup to home or wherever the customer is going to take it, has allowed us to kind of reformulate it to allow for speed, efficiency, and in the quick service model or quality counter service. I wouldn't, it's not as quick as say a Chipotle, but it's definitely more curated than that. I think nothing against Chipotle. I love Chipotle, but it's kind of that in between place of counter service and sit down. It has allowed us to modify the model to allow it for expansion. So we are in that phase of, looking at this, as unfortunately a lot of restaurants have closed. It has also opened up a lot of turnkey places that we could go into and capture more market share.
Spent 47 years in the restaurant business as a chef, and 3 years ago, my wife and I decided to buy a little shack on the side of a pretty popular country road just south of Portland and open a farm stand and establish a pretty good size. I like to call it a micro farm, but it's really just a really large, it's about 3,000 square foot garden. And so we sell produce as our primary source of revenue, but we have jams and jellies and things, but everything is produced within about 50 miles of our location, and some of it as close as just outside our window. And so we've been doing it for 3 years, and it was a kind of a rough go for the first year, and then last year was pretty good. But this year, I'm almost embarrassed to say that I think that the current circumstances actually benefited us, because people are really looking for not just safe but wholesome, fresh, certainly local options, and we've been able to provide that.
We've got training resources for operators, distributors. We've got nutritional information. Since the pandemic, we've really kind of boiled things down to focusing on 4 things: recognizing the changing dynamics of the industry.
Thanks, Alan. So my role with Idaho Potatoes is as their corporate consulting chef, and part of that role is to inspire. One of our favorite portable heroes, like when we first started thinking about like what travels well with potatoes, we know that French fries don't, even though there's some ideas there, but what does travel well? And we think of potato salad, and not just grandma's potato salad, but other potato salads like what you see in front of you. There's a lot of different variations, from the type of potato to even the format and the ingredients that you put within it. And potato salad, just to use this as the example, has a lot of layers to what we can look at in terms of innovating or being creative against. I pulled out a few of those, what I like to call levers, because those are things that you can pick and pull for ultimate creativity and innovation within a recipe. And here's a few within just potato salad. These are some chef recipes that we did with some of our other chef friends, and started to put more of a takeout lens and things that would travel well. This is an Idaho potato hash. Hash is a rock star, as you may know, traveling well. One of the flavor trends that I've really started following is with koji and transforming food with koji. But from a national chain level, it's hard to imagine how you'd ever incorporate koji. And this was one that we just recently did with Chef Jeremy Urbanskis from Larder in Cleveland. he actually used shio koji, which is an already prepared form of it, and just mixed in with a little bit of heavy cream to make his own koji sour cream. So in essence, it is a speed scratch recipe to incorporate a trend like koji easily into your menu. Of course, with potato latkes, if it's in a takeout scenario, you can keep all of those ingredients separate to maintain texture. Latkes we found actually heat really well once they get to the other side. So if you wanted to store these even cold, have them go off to the end consumer to where they're reheating them in the microwave or even in a pan, they're very easy to do that way. When speaking upon profitability, obviously using and utilizing your ingredients as much as possible is important. And so with the potato, we look at all the different ways that you can not only utilize the potato, but incorporate the potato. And potatoes work extremely well within baked items for moisture and tenderization. So consider even incorporating that if you're left with a glut of potatoes, incorporating into things like baked items, pies, stews, pastas, even pizzas. It works really well on. On the left, traditional Johnny cakes. We love using potatoes in pancakes and those style of cakes. It helps them hold well, especially as they travel, and keeps texture and moisture. When thinking about different equities of potatoes, so like traditional loaded baked potatoes and turning into something new and on trend, that's where loaded Idaho potato takoyaki. These are a couple of the ideas that we were going to serve at Flavor Experience this year. Unfortunately, didn't have the opportunity to do that. But it's the way that we're thinking about not only incorporating potatoes, but keeping them fresh and something that's on trend and exciting for customers. And when it comes to innovation, lo and behold, we've got now 100% plant-based potatoes. If you didn't think that joke was funny, it's Alan's joke, so you can blame him. If you didn't think it's funny, it was my joke. But either way, we all love Idaho potatoes, 100% plant-based. And when it comes to innovation with potatoes, that's what we're here to just inspire. And we know that these items may not necessarily be something that you can do in your operation, but we hope that there's a nugget of an idea there to help inspire your next creative menu session within your restaurant for something new that would work under the lens of your brand. When leaning into the equities of other takeout items, Idaho stuffed pizza bites. So we're really playing into pizza. Then a couple other things, Idaho potato chicharron. So, could you do an actual chicharron? Maybe, maybe not. But if you can't, think about all the different ways that you could drive texture and shape, even with potato chips. Rethinking the way to look at twice baked potatoes. So that's in the top right there with a twice baked potato bite. And then to the bottom, re-envisioning what a traditional flautas would look like.
Give us some parting shots that you would want to say to both corporate chefs and our sponsors and the community that are listening about, where we're going in this future and what role you see yourselves playing and us playing in it.
It's been an opportunity to really start over and really fix all the things that when you're on the bus and it's going a million miles an hour, it's really tough. Mm-hmm. To make those pivots. But when you shut down and you start from scratch again, it's an opportunity to really hone in and make your business stronger and more viable and more profitable from a way that the pivot of what everybody's being forced into to look at it from those eyes through those binoculars and really hone in on how you can make it through this.
Our operation has just been blessed to be appealing to folks at this, in these times. And so, but I think it speaks to folks' interest in fresh and local. And I realize that that's always a challenge.
So our interests really lie in helping you utilize product the best way you can for yourself. And that's what we're here for.
Right now, it's just absolutely killing some small mom and pops and even all the way up into some of the national chains. And so I just try to be a good human and listen and understand some of the challenges that everyone's facing today and just find where I can either be a resource or an area of support for those that are going through this, or just to be a good friend and let's have drinks once we can all get back on the road again.